Hello and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Today on the podcast, we have Josh Roush from Movetic. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, good to chat again. And, I was doing a little, I'd say, pre-work before we hopped on the podcast, and I was looking at your guys' website and some of the brands, the projects, and the different things you guys have been involved in. So when you're gearing up to do projects like that, how do you make sure that the brand stays first foremost and it's given its proper importance just to plant the seed? Like, one of the things we run into all the time is people want to downgrade the importance of brand, and for guys like us, me specifically, I just think, man, you got to keep that at the forefront. So with that, how do you kind of keep it that way?
Yeah, I think innately it always comes down to a brand's foundation. And a lot of people say it's synonymous with somebody's house, right? If you have a strong brand foundation, i.e. your house, your infrastructure is sound, you're able to get through the resilient times in this world, right? And so I think for us, with every project, we have to ensure that either A, we need to net new establish it, or B, figure out where they're currently at right now and how do we push them forward with the right tools for them to be successful.
So even with big brands, do you feel like you have to remind them of that, teach them that? I know I've ran into situations with big brands where they sometimes think they don't need it. They've been at it long enough where maybe they're feeling a little confident about it and well, we don't need to position ourselves that way. And it's like, you do, because it's more of a maintenance thing. It's a consistency thing. So how do you deal with that with clients and some of these big brands that you guys work with?
Yeah, I think right now, especially in the current business landscape, you have to think about the business world as in stories, right? And so right now, a lot of things changing, right? You have like AI, you have a lot of different brands that are kind of coming in and eating market share. So I think it's really relevant and important for people to take a step back and really be like, okay, where are we planted and do we have the right tools to be successful? And what does that look like, right? Because a lot of times maybe their visual identity might be, hey, this is our positioning, this is who we are, this is what we stand for. But when you do a competitive analysis and say you look across their other, whether it's direct or indirect competitors, what happens if they're all saying the same thing? Right. And that to me is
Yeah.
a light bulb moment that you have to really be like, okay, hey, like just because maybe your foundation was built on this, we might need to pivot and create a net new story based off of what you created in the past as a way to be unique.
Yeah. Is there a way that you guys kind of strategically interweave that brand throughout the different kinds of projects that you guys do? From what I saw, you guys do all kinds of things, from websites to brand builds to just, basic kind of collateral support even.
Yeah, I think, years ago, I really fell in love with brand strategy. And I think that is just something that's always kind of layered in it. So, again, for us, we're working with every client very uniquely based off of very set of problems that they have in the marketplace. So in everything we do, whether it's brand, web, or content, we have to fundamentally understand who they are and what they stand for and how they get differentiated. That then becomes the confines to uniqueness, right? And I know you and I have spoke at lengths about the value of brand and finding ways to be different. But if you don't have a solid brand foundation, i.e. strategy, what's the point of doing what you're doing?
And even to kind of play off something you said there, I think a lot of times companies, businesses, I think the challenge out there is to be different. And in my mind, to be different is you still have to that recipe has to transcend into that difference, right? So you don't want it to be off brand. You don't want to be different just for the sake of being different, but you want to find ways to expand the brand while at the same time being fresh and unique. And I think there's a lot more to it than most people give it credit for. And I think talking with, even just, kind of volleying back and forth with guys like yourself, I think it's a good reminder for myself and listeners that, to kind of explore those dark corners of your own brand, and being different might just be there somewhere in the shadows.
Yeah, and I love what you said there because I think, being different has a lot of point of views to it. To me, being different is just the idea of like, really honing in on who you are and then really having that being the uniqueness, right? It's not about being completely bold just for bold sake. It's not about being splashy for splashy sake. It's not about being trendy for trending sake, right? Like at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's about are you communicating effectively to your community, to your audience, and are you doing it in the appropriate means? And I think being different to me has always been, hey, who you are is the one thing that nobody else can compete with. So
Yeah.
innately, by being yourself, that is how you transcend to being different.
Yeah. Completely agree. And speaking of being different, tell me about like your entrepreneurial journey a little bit with Movetic and kind of how you got to where you're at today with all this. Cause I think, your body of work and the overall examples like you have on your website are super impressive. And I think for anybody that's, out there still grinding and trying to find their place in this whole thing, I think, this would be a great reference point for them and to learn.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'd say, I guess to kind of take it back. So prior to starting Movetic, shout out to 10 years. I don't know if you can believe that. We've been in business for 10 years. Crazy. I worked at Hewlett Packard. I worked at Reef. And then I had a handful of just free gigs back in the day when gigs were free and did a lot of that type of stuff. So, when I was 24, I just made a decision with my co-founder, Andrew, just to kind of go for it. I think at that day and age, I just saw a big divide of social media and really this idea of like talking with your consumers. I felt like innately traditional and digital was so push, push, push. And why I love branding, it's about pull, right? And I think a lot of times people kind of forget that there is a huge line in the sands between branding and marketing, and they're two completely facets of a brand's DNA. So 24 started it, just kind of hustled from gig to gig, and have just been hustling for 10 years and just been focusing on creating great work with great people. And like anything, we've gone through a lot, but just super blessed to have moments like yourself being here and working with a handful of different brands. But it really comes down to grit. I'd say that's a huge thing that is very overlooked for a lot of people. It's just, you got to keep your head down and just keep pushing forward.
Yep. I completely agree with everything you said. And I want to throw one more thing on the pile and see if this is part of your overall plan as well. But one of the things I just had this discussion with another entrepreneur yesterday, and it was about kind of staying true to your vision. So I'm coming up on my 10th year. You're in your 10th year. Congratulations. But I think part of that, at least for me, part of that journey has been to keep coming back to the road, because every opportunity, every year that goes by, you kind of get pulled in these different directions. And it's like they're tempting. And sometimes you even take the bait and you're like, oh man, then you got to come back to the road. But I think there's a lot to be said for, kind of continually collaborating and not collaborating, but calibrating that vision and bringing it back to the road so you can kind of stay on your focus and stay kind of on that path, because 10 years is a huge milestone. And for anybody who's ran a business before, like it goes by really fast, but 10 years that's a shift, man. So
yeah. And I love that what you said, and kind of to answer it directly on what I do to keep pushing. So years ago, we came up with this, has been kind of our internal, then became an external mantra, which is this idea of staying moving. The reason why we have that idea was because for me and my business partner, we always love to challenge ourselves with every project. We don't like to get complacent. And really, it's more of a sentiment to ourselves, a promise, a duty to our own vision to constantly push ourselves outside the box, to constantly grow. And then what that innately does, that provides that value to our clients, right? So when you talk about the vision, staying true to that, regardless of, hey, maybe there's a flashy new service offering that maybe an agency wants to go after, or hey, they want to expand their X, Y, and Z to get their MRR up, right? Depending on what that, to me, it's always been very simple. Humans are at the core of the brands. I want to tell stories, and then I want to constantly push myself to get better and progress, whether it's one small step or a big step, you name it. That's what Stay Moving is meant to us. And that's what's really, truly kept us on this path for 10 years. Even if we go this way, this way, this way, this way, all roads kind of come back to that as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's important for people to hear that and kind of digest that. It's not that you can't take chances or get off the path here and there, but just be aware of it. Come back to the center, come back to the vision, because as you craft this kind of vision for yourself and that long-term goal of a successful business, it's all based off of that path and that road. It's not based off the what ifs. So it's important to kind of at least keep it on your radar and be aware of it as you grow. So
it's definitely been a journey for sure, to say the least.
So what's next for you guys? What is, I mean, obviously we're coming into Q4 2024. How, first question, how's the year been? But secondly, like, what does 2025 look like? Where are you at in this growth process, and how much left do you have to kind of get there to see your vision come to reality?
Yeah. Well, first off, this year absolutely flew by. I don't know if you felt that way, but
100%.
faster than ever. And yeah, like you said, I mean, Q4 pretty much knocking at the door, i.e. here. And so for us, I think it's been over the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 years, we've really nestled ourselves into a lot of like CPG, a lot of hospitality, and then also campaign work. So right now, specifically, we have launched a couple new brands. We're in the process of revitalizing a legacy brand. And then we're in the process of working on a campaign that is launching in 2025. So between that and trying to make things happen, boy, we got a lot of work on our hands and stuff like that. So it's definitely been a little bit of a different year, but on an optimistic level, it does feel like as of late, things are pushing, right?
Yeah.
And think people are like excited and trying to figure out what this next point of view looks like. So we're just we got to get the work done this year, push, and then set landmines for, okay, what does 2025 look like? And really just laying that brick by brick as well.
Yeah. I'd love your perspective on this, but like, to your point, like our year, same thing. It was just a complete blur, but we put some things in motion this year that are kind of foundation builders, some brand calibration stuff, some operation stuff. So we purposefully kind of jacked up our year a little bit so that we could kind of progress the business in other ways. And what I've really felt this year is like we went from 2 to 3 lanes of traffic to 5 or 6 now, and they're all coming in at different speeds, but they're all kind of coming in together. So we're kind of, like we're basically looking at Q4 as to how are we gonna land all these planes at the same time and not crash, because we know that it's a setup year. We know that a lot of the different things that we're working on outside of, taking care of clients and whatnot, but we know that a lot of the things that we're working on is for the betterment of 2025. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and kind of how you've experienced that as well. Cause I think as entrepreneurs, sometimes business owners, just in general, all these things are happening at different paces. Even, some of the quick turn, quick reaction marketing stuff happens at a much different pace than branding. So thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think one, it comes down to we've always been pretty lean and flexible. So I think, to have a successful company, that those are kind of the same elements that you have to have fundamentally. But I'd say the other thing that's really interesting is that the playbook that what was for the last like 8, 9 years is no longer, right? And that's, I think, the scary part, right? Like you think fundamentally, like you talk about the level of producing content, you talk about the level of creating a brand, you talk about the level of like what's working, you talk about the algorithms, like there's all these different things that are kind of shaking up the ecosystem. To me, right now, it's even more interesting because, especially in our vertical, right? Like I could have a brand call tomorrow and be like, hey, I want to get ready on a brand that's, coming to town. And you're like, wait, like you can't really plan for that, right? So what you have to do is just kind of go with the flow, have a really good, team that can go in and out with, and then figure it out that way. So that's what it's more of a mindset shift because I think
Mhm.
for a while, right, the idea in any agency was like, okay, you have headcount, you have OpEx, you have certain amount of project flow, it ends at this time. And now you're like, oh, no, you could get a call tomorrow and somebody wants to get started tomorrow. So how do you ebb and flow that way? Or, oh, I maybe need a mini campaign in a month that maybe was planned for 3 to 6 months, right? So I
Yeah.
think everybody's like fighting this, like, oh boy, what do we do? How do we do it? And stuff like that.
I think those who resist the evolution, though, they're the ones who are struggling. And like you said, if you can align a certain percentage of your team to be nimble and be quick and be kind of on the ready and ready to react. And I think a huge part of this too is a heightened awareness of just transparency. So depending on how quick a client needs something or what that turn time is, it's just about be realistic, be transparent, and be honest about it, because it's all, like you said, it's moving faster than it had probably the last 7, 8 years or whatever it was, because, just I mean, there's a lot of factors, but you just, very simply, you think about TikTok, AI, just those two things alone have drastically disrupted the way we do things and the way people perceive things. Not a bad, not a bad thing, but prior to that, I can't really think of, because Facebook, Instagram, they were all kind of on a steady Eddie growth path. They weren't blowing your mind on a daily basis. And between TikTok, AI, and like you said, some of the algorithm stuff, yeah, it's changed a lot in 24 months. It really has.
Yeah, and I think too, you said something earlier. It was about just the idea of like the value of a partnership. And this is like the time that I feel like everybody has to kind of lock hands and work together as a unit, right? I
Yeah.
just think, a lot of the answers maybe we didn't know are no longer there. And that comes with vulnerability, right? Like at the end of the day, finding a partner that, as long as you're down to do the work and put in the effort, you might not know all the answers. That's to me more valuable than somebody thinking they know all the answers, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's right now something that's happening is that we don't know, like something that innately could do super well creatively, use TikTok as an example, can do super well on TikTok, copy the same formula for somebody else, boom, no chance,
Yeah.
right? Or do it again, you see half the views, right? So I think there's like a vulnerability in our market innately that everybody's kind of going through. But then that's also the beauty because as things go up and as we're kind of like in this, like, okay, we're leveling the playing field, this is our one time I feel like to come together and be like, hey, how can we make each other better? And that's what's
I
really
agree.
neat about right now.
I think that's even true amongst agencies. Like I think, the agency world has always been pretty competitive, at least how I've experienced it. And I think the opportunity now is to, put your swords away and be collaborative. And, if one agency is better than X, Y, and Z than you or whatever it is, but seek those who have expertise in certain areas and just kind of run forward with this all ships rise with the tide mentality because you can't be all things to all people. And the way things have evolved in the speed in which they've evolved, it's really hard to play that game. Not that I want to, but I see that in my clients that they have a need and they don't necessarily care how you get there. They just want you to get there. So I think it kind of puts us in the position to network and collaborate and make friends with other agencies because A, we can help each other out, but B, it's really about delivering that end result to the client.
Yeah. And I think that's like, a big lesson that I learned a while ago was, you know, try not to be all things for everybody.
Mhm.
For us, we love working in all different arenas or different industries because it keeps us fresh, keeps us on the top. Like it helps us, try different tricks in different areas and do that stuff or whatnot. But what I do know is that we're just really big on strategy, brand, web, and content. And I know that, and not to say like, oh, that's it, but like that's what we focus on
Right.
versus like paid media or SEO or some of these other things. I'm like, I'm going to focus on what I get excited about. And then mainly comes down to creativity and storytelling. And
Yeah.
that's what drives me every day.
Yeah. And we talked about this before, but just for the listener, I think it's important to know that like when we're talking about like the focus stuff, that's just the 80%. That's the food we chase when we're hunting.
Yeah.
And the other 20% is not that we can't connect those dots and make those things happen, but we know where our skill sets at. We know where our talents are at. So we focus on those things. And I think, again, that's important for, whether it's the solopreneur or other agencies out there to find that 80%. What are you really good at and focus on it.
Focus is everything in business, isn't it?
It definitely, just from I think from an ownership side or agency side, it makes it easier to tell your story. Because I've been in those situations where whether it was another agency or even you're trying to get the sales, so the lines get a little blurry as to, yeah, I think we can do that. You start
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
kind of convince yourself that maybe you're more talented than you are in other areas. And it just kind of makes it clumsy and it makes it, like I said, it blurs those lines. But I think when you're hyper focused on what you do best, it makes the confidence come out. But I think it makes the story that you're telling that much more palatable for the client. So
Absolutely. Could not agree anymore.
Yeah. Well, dude, I appreciate you doing the quick chat with me and coming on the podcast. It's always a pleasure chatting and swapping notes. And take us out. Tell us a little bit more about where they can learn what you guys are up to and kind of follow along.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I know we clicked the first time we met, so I really appreciate you having me on this. Yeah, for us, just, themovetic.com, we're active on LinkedIn and active on IG and stuff like that. But yeah, just really excited to get on a call with you and just chat through it. 'Cause I know you and I spoke about it's rare that you get to chat with other agency folks like ourselves and stuff like that. And the reason why I think I gravitated towards you so much the first time was that, like, you're all about the value of what's best for the client and creating a relationship that is leveraging your skills. So yeah, I feel like we're super aligned on that, and just want to say thank you again for having me.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. And we'll have you on again. But thanks again for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.